Welcome class back to Project 2, Data Visualization. This is the 5th video in our series and second to the last. So we're going to cover the section Mapping Global Data Sets JSON Format. So prior to this section we looked at the CSV file format. So this section is just going to look at a different file format and how we can use that in our data, as well as to get some visualization from that data. So this section is going to look at earthquake data, and it's going to look at earthquake data that has occurred in the world during the previous month. And then we're going to make a map showing the location of these earthquakes and how significant each earthquake was. Because the data is stored in the JSON format, we'll work with it using the JSON module. And then we're going to use Plotly's mapping tool for location-based data. And we're going to create some visualizations using Plotly. So the first thing that we need to do is go ahead and get our data files. So I'll be sending you these two data files, and I will have you create a data folder and store those in your chapter 5. Now, the reason I call it chapter 5 is because it's the 5th video, okay, the 5th section in this data visualization project. So the data 1 and data 30 will be the two files that I'll be sending you. So let's go ahead and look at these files actually. So let's go ahead and look at the 1. So this is the JSON format, and just glancing at it, it's not very readable, okay, not very friendly. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a more readable format, okay? So we're going to be doing that on page 348. So let's go ahead and create a new file, and we're going to save it as EQ Explore _ data. Now you're going to want to save this outside of the data folder. Okay, so here's the code that's on page 348. Okay, so we first import the JSON module to load the data properly from the file, and then store the entire set of data in all EQ data. Okay, the JSON load function converts the data into a format Python can work with, in this case a giant dictionary. We create a file to write this same data into a more readable format, and we do that using JSON dump, which takes a JSON data object and a file object and writes the data to that file. The indent4 argument tells dump to format the data using indentation that matches the data's structure. So let's go ahead and run this file. And then open up the readable EQ JSON, which is the one that we created in this second section. And you can see it's a lot more readable, right? There's indentation. So we start off with a dictionary, and that dictionary has some keys, and that key is type and metadata. Also features. Okay, and there's some more keys as we go through, okay? So let's just look at the very first part of it. We have type, metadata. Okay, so metadata has a count on it, okay, a count keyword that gives us 158. Okay, features also has properties, and properties has magnitude, okay, also a place and time and so on. But it's much more readable than looking at this. Okay, so again, the way that we did this is we read our data into a file, okay, and then we use that data along with the JSON dump, okay, function that allowed it to be more readable. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see. Now we're on page 350. So let's go ahead and we're going to grab only features. Okay, so we've got all EQ data, and we're going to be looking at the features key. So let's go ahead and see if we can find our features key. Okay, so there's features. Okay, and we're going to output that information. Okay, so let's go ahead and add to our code here. see here, what did I type wrong? I grabbed the wrong, there we go. Okay, so we take the data associated with the key features and store it in all EQ dictionaries. We know this file contains records about 158 earthquakes, and the output verifies that we've captured all of the earthquakes in that file. Okay, so features giving us a total because we're using the LEN property. Okay, let's go ahead and expand by looking at extracting some magnitudes. So after features, we're going to go ahead and bring in mags. Right, now we're grabbing just the first 10. So if we come back to our file and look for properties, okay, then we'll notice that we also have another key called mag. Okay, so that's what we're extracting right there, is a key called properties and then an additional secondary key called mag. Okay, we're making an empty list, which is mags, okay, and then we're going to loop through using our for structure. Okay, so we're looping through all EQ dictionaries. Okay, we're looping through each one of them and we're grabbing just properties mag. We store that in mag and then we're going to go ahead and append that to our list. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at extracting location data. Okay, so completed code from page 351. Bringing in our longitudes and our latitudes. So again, looking for the key geometry, and further looking for coordinates, and then we're going to grab the first occurrence. Okay, and this one's going to be the second occurrence. So the first occurrence is referring to the longitude, and the second occurrence is referring to latitude. We further create two lists, longitudes and latitudes, and we go ahead and append just like we did with the magnitudes. Okay, and now we get into the visual side of things where we're going to actually plot, and we're going to be using Plotly to do this. So we're going to create a file called EQ World Map. So this one's a little bit confusing as to what to bring in. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take your entire file that you have with the EQ Explorer data. You're going to copy that over to the world map. And then after the import JSON is where you're going to put in your from statements. So bringing in Plotly. We're bringing in scatter, geo, and layout modules from Plotly. Okay, then you're going to have your data here. This is that snip portion. Okay, so no longer printing. You can definitely leave the prints in here, but this is where the section that is going to be updated. Okay, so we're going to map the earthquakes. Okay, so first we import scatter geo chart type and the layout class, and then import offline module to render the map. As we did when making a bar chart, we define a list called data. Okay, so this is the map, the earthquake section here. We create the scatter geo object inside this list, because you can plot more than one data set on any visualization you make. A scatter geo chart type allows you to overlay a scatter plot of geographic data on a map. In the simplest use of this chart type, you only need to provide a list of longitudes and a list of latitudes. We give the chart the title Global Earthquakes and create a dictionary called FIG. Okay, in the curly braces, note the dictionary. that contains the data in the layout. Finally, we pass fig to the plot function, okay, that contains the data, function along with a descriptive file name for the output. So global earthquakes HTML is going to be what is created from here. And we have each of our latitude and our longitudes. Okay, so from there, what we're going to do is we're going to expand and find a different way to specify our chart data. And so it's simply just a different way of coding. Okay, so instead of having scatter geo listed here in this line here, we're going to code what we see on the page of 353. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to create a dictionary with some keys. And you'll see this syntax quite often. We use this syntax a lot in the language jQuery. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run it again. Let's see what I typed wrong here. Okay, so I'm missing an E on the geo. Let's see if that's the only one. Okay, so the same map coming back to us. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to customize the marker size that is appearing on the map itself. So we'll add another key and we'll call it marker. And here we're going to assign it a dictionary with using size. And we are going to increase the size of it by taking it times 5. So this is a list comprehension, which we talked about in chapter 4. So we want to make sure that when you're coding these, that you're really looking for where those commas are placed. So let's go ahead and see our results. And now we have a bigger marker size. Now we can further customize by bringing in colors, okay, for those marker sizes. So I am going to change it to the 30 data. Okay, so instead of the 1, we're going to be using the 30. And then we're going to add into marker. So marker is not just going to have size, but it's also going to have a color. Okay, so make sure again you update to the 30-day data set. The color setting tells Plotly what values it should use to determine where each marker falls on the color scale. We use the mags list to determine the color that is used. The color scale setting tells Plotly which range of colors to use. And I don't even know how to pronounce that. So Viridis, okay, maybe, is the color scale that ranges from the dark blue to bright yellow and works well for this data set. We set reverse scale to true because we want to use bright yellow for the lowest value and dark blue for the most severe earthquakes. And the color bar setting allows us to control the appearance of the color scale shown on the side of the map. Here we're going to title the color scale magnitude to make it clear what colors represent. So let's see our results. Okay, and so from the smallest in the yellow, okay, to the largest with a dark kind of purple almost. And this is 30 days worth of earthquakes versus the 1 day. We can also do show color scales, and I'm just going to quickly show you this one. So here is the code found on page 356, and we're just using Plotly scales. Okay, and this just shows us what color scales are defined in our dictionary, Plotly scales. Okay, and the names of those color scales. So if we scroll down, we can see the one that we were using. Okay, so you can play around with those. Okay, the last thing that we're going to do is go ahead and add hover text, so when we hover over those earthquake markers, that we get some more meaningful information. I'll go ahead and hide this. Okay, so adding on to another list here. And then further, we got to add it into our data. So lats and now when we hover, we have more meaningful information. Okay, so the text is coming from properties title. So if we come back and look at our code here, so the title is coming from the key properties and title found in our file. Okay, so if we find properties, and there should be a title as well right here, and that's where the information is coming from. So how to submit this one? I want these files that we see here. And so the data don't necessarily need to send that to me, but I would love to see the EQ Explorer data, the EQ World Map, your Global Earthquakes HTML file, and the Show Color Scale files. So zip those to me for credit for this section, and we have one more section to work with, and that will be working with APIs. Questions, let me know. Thank you.